her birthday. I feel obligated to get her something.
Lindsay's been on the set a lot. She comes to watch the show and comes and stays with me in New York. So y'all know her like family, too.
She's the one in the chicken salad business,
yep,
right?
Chicken salad chicks.
All right. Meanwhile, let's talk about this. Is today the day the American public will be able to see that super secret classified FISA memo that supposedly, according to Republicans, makes the Department of Justice and the FBI look bad? The Department of Justice and the FBI have both made 11th hour pleas to the White House and to the Republicans. Don't let it out. There's a lot of secret stuff in there. People can't handle it, essentially, is what they're saying.
So the Democrats wanted to get their memo out, and I imagine eventually it will be. And I think it's probably, as Speaker Ryan said, okay, we'll put it out too. We'll put it through the process, put it to a vote, and see if it goes forward to a rebuttal to it. But you wonder what that's about, because we don't even know what the original memo says. Only rumors from people that shouldn't be talking about a memo. But when the memo goes up to the FBI director sees it Sunday. 5 more agents see it yesterday. Then they decide we'd rather not release this memo. Then Adam Schiff, Devin Nunes makes some changes, and Adam Schiff is prompted to rebut by saying this. Discovered late tonight that Chairman Nunes made material changes to the memo he sent to the White House. Changes not approved by the committee. White House therefore reviewing a document the committee has not approved for release.
Okay, so that sets this up. If, and Devin Nunes apparently has said that he did make some little tweaks. Some were grammar, some were clarifying statements. Nonetheless, keep in mind, FBI, Christopher Wray said, can you change this, Mr. Nunes? And then you got the 5 agents. Can you change this? It has since gone to the White House. The White House chief of staff, chief counsel, rather, is reviewing it. And apparently so is the NSA. The big question is, if there are changes, will they have to vote on it again? Can't vote on it today or tomorrow because half of Congress, all the Republicans, are out in West Virginia.
Well, we do deserve to know, in order to know how to clean up these agencies, we need to know how to fix them. We need to know what the problems are. Americans want to see this. Most Americans do. Judge Napolitano was on with us earlier, and he said you, as the taxpayer, you have the right to know. Listen.
My argument is, when you have raw data, raw intelligence data, and there's several different interpretations, we're adults. Release the data. Let us decide who abused spying authority, who knew about it, who looked the other way, who's not doing what they're paid to do. We have the right to know that in a democracy.
Well, the whole statement with Adam Schiff coming out saying what he said says the White House has left the White House officials. They are scratching their heads as to what the FBI and DOJ are up to. And John Roberts does say the memo could be released as early as today, this morning, during our show.
The president has 5 days, which would be, technically, if you count work days, he would have to make up his mind by Monday.
Sure. Look, if there were bad actors at the Department of Justice or at the FBI, we ought to know. You know, there are so many Democrats in Congress who are talking, we got to get to the bottom of the Russia collusion. Did Russia help Donald Trump get elected president? The big question is, did the FBI, was somebody at the FBI or the Department of Justice trying to put their thumb on the scale to get Hillary Clinton elected, or at least to make Donald Trump look bad? Perhaps we will see the document, and then we will be able to draw our own conclusions later today.
Sources in the FBI have said there are a few bad apples. If there are, we want to know.
Yeah.
We want to know. Even people within the own agency say, if this is happening, we deserve the right to know so that our agency can clean itself up and get back to having a good reputation.
And not to digress too much, but the Washington Post, of all places, yesterday said, oh, yeah, Andy McCabe, the guy that just left, he had all of Anthony Weiner's laptop emails with Hillary Clinton's name on them from Uma Abedin. Oh, weeks before we actually saw them. Really? And guess who voted to put them forward? Peter Strzok, 3 weeks later. So they could have been out as early as September, maybe if the New York field office had their way. But Andy McCabe sat on it for a while before allegedly telling James Comey, who made the October announcement, that Hillary Clinton still despises.
All right. Well, we just got back from Washington because the president was there with his first State of the Union address. You saw it. 11 million people watched Fox News Channel. Thank you so much. Those were really high ratings and highest rated cable channel. It just shows you that people in middle America, they really wanted to hear this. They are the president is in touch with what the American people care about, and that is putting food on their table, making sure the borders are safe. Nancy Pelosi disagreed with a lot of what the president said, and here she is. Listen to this.
People in Congress want to know, some of them, what will the president sign? Without any basis on evidence, data, and the rest, he makes these statements about newcomers to our country and equating it in a criminal way. What was that about? what was that about last night? So it was, I would say confusing. It was worse than that. It was dangerous what he said last night. And it has instilled fear, as I say over and over. What he is doing brings tears to the eyes of the Statue of Liberty and instills fear in the hearts of people who are concerned.
I'm a little confused because the Statue of Liberty sits not too far from Ellis Island. So many of our forefathers came through Ellis Island to immigrate to the United States legally. So why is Lady Liberty crying over that?
Good point.
Some in steerage to do it the right way who could barely afford to get over here.
They came in and they signed the guest book just as the rules are.
And here's the thing. Listen, it was an hour and 15 minutes. In the speech was the worry about bad people and drugs coming across the border. In the speech was a pathway to citizenship for DACA.
All right, Wolf tweeted, he said, I agree, the Statue of Liberty hasn't heard such patriotic truths in a very long time. She shed tears of joy.
Christensen emailed us, the Dems are carrying this complete hatred way too far.
Right. I think it's separate when you see the polls show that most people like the speech. Janet says, never in all my years have I heard such hate come from the opposition party, except for a few, like Joe Manchin, who we interviewed yesterday. Stoop to new lows every day with the trash talk against our great country. I'm the one with tears in my eyes. And a lot of people just throw up their hands and say, I'm not watching this anymore. You know, I'm not watching the anger because it's starting to get to them.
All right. Meanwhile, you know, it's starting to get to you. If you have a paycheck, it looks like starting today, the withholding tables are changing, which means less money will be taken out of your paycheck going to Washington, D.C., which means more money is going to be kept in your pocket. Stuart Varney is a happy man today, obviously, and he says, while the Democrats are talking about crumbs and it's not really helping you, he says that party is actually misleading as many Americans as they can.
Paychecks are going up because tax rates are going down. Nancy Pelosi is dead wrong when she says that 86 million middle-class American families will see a tax increase because of this tax bill. Dead wrong, deliberately misleading the American public.
Wages are up at the fastest pace since 2008. The stock market went up faster than any time, the longest winning streak since 1959. And we know that the average wages are increasing. The Democrats have to decide, are they going to continue to deny the impact of the tax reform, or are they going to just try to take credit for it? It seems they're going for the latter. They're taking credit for it.
That's all they got. That's their only play, because so many pundits have already said, look, the Republicans are going to lose the House, and now they're looking at, wow, had no idea this thing was actually going to work. Hamina.
Vice President had the best lines when it came to this, because he didn't grow up a wealthy man, and he said, "What did we call $1,000 as a bonus? We call that Christmas." Yeah. You know, he said, "I go to Joseph A. Bank so I can buy one get one free suits." I mean, that's where my dad and my brother shop. That's how we all grew up. You have to turn the lights off when you leave the room to save a few extra bucks. That's just how most people live. Mm-hmm. When you have Nancy Pelosi, that's worth how much? $40 million. Mm-hmm. One of our guests said, and she's calling it crumbs. It's insulting. They're out of touch with the American people.
Email us. Let us know what you will do with the money that you will be able to now keep in your pocket. Friends at FoxNews.com. You can tweet us, or we're on Facebook 24/7.
What's Jillian going to do with all her extra?
Oh, I don't know. So many options, guys.
Frisco's calling you
Vacation! Yeah, right? I need one of those. Good morning. Let's get you caught up on the headlines right now, starting with this. A Virginia Tech student is under arrest for having an illegal assault rifle and trying to buy 5,000 rounds of ammo. Police say Young Sung Zhao also went to target practice, researched bulletproof vests, and bought an old cop car. Zhao is from China and is not allowed to possess firearms under his student visa. The arrest comes more than a decade after a gunman killed 32 people at Virginia Tech. It was the deadliest school shooting in U.S. history. After 5 years, the Justice Department officially closing the case against Senator Bob Menendez. The move comes after an 11-week trial ended in a hung jury. The New Jersey Democrat was accused of abusing power, accepting bribes in return for political favors, which included lavish hotel suites and free rides on private jets. Minneapolis tightening security ahead of Super Bowl Sunday. Not only will there be thousands of officers working the big game, but also thousands of cameras and drones watching every single move. The head of Homeland Security reassuring fans about their safety.
Obviously, due to its size, its scope, it is and can be an attractive target. We don't have any credible or specific threat intel, but we will continue to actively monitor channels with our international partners.
law enforcement has been preparing for 2 years. Let's look at your headlines, guys.
You've been preparing for this Super Bowl your whole life.
My whole life. The Eagles don't have a Super Bowl title.
Right.
I was watching one of the pressers, and who's the guy? His name is Fletcher Cox.
Yep.
He was wearing a wrestling mask the whole time. Someone told him it was
He's amazing. He's our best defensive player, arguably one of the best defensive players
He did
in
the
the
whole
league.
press conference with a wrestling mask.
Oh yeah.
All right.
It's really funny.
Yay.
Thank you, Elaine. Good luck.
Thank you. All right, coming up, that deadly train crash involving Republican lawmakers, obviously that is a tragedy, right? Well, not for some liberal authors, one calling it God working hard. Dana Lash is going to react to that live.
Plus, that controversial FISA memo could be released today. But should it be? Senator Rand Paul in studio has a warning about government surveillance.
That bombshell FISA abuse memo could be made public as soon as today, much to the outrage of the Democrats and the FBI.
Republican Senator Rand Paul has been warning about the dangers of government surveillance. He joins us live right now. So you actually wrote a letter to the director of the FBI, Christopher Wray, saying what?
Well, you know, Peter Strzok and his mistress, Lisa Page, have shown that they were very biased against Trump. At work, they were discussing ways to prevent him from being elected, and they were talking about an insurance policy if he was elected, some way to obstruct or to destroy his presidency. One, you shouldn't be talking about that at work if you're supposed to be in law enforcement. But two, my question is now to the FBI director, do they still have access to databases? So there are these large...
The lovebirds?
Yeah, there are these large databases that have communications of journalists in there, of politicians, of businessmen and women, and really maybe just somebody who has a relative in Lebanon. You're in the database. Americans. No one should be searching that, I don't think, without judge's permission. But now we know that, like what Madison warned us about, men are not angels, neither are women. Mm-hmm. And the thing is that people have the potential to be biased on either side. We know Strzok and Page had it in for President Trump. They shouldn't be allowed to search any database that has Americans'
information. What's in that
information
database? Like all of Social Security or all of our text messages?
All your electronic history.
Potentially anything that's been a discussion with foreigners. It was intended, and the speaker was right when he said it's intended for foreigners in foreign lands, and I have no problem with that. But what happens is there's interaction. So if you send something to a correspondent in Fox in the Middle East and you say, we're doing a story on ISIS. Well, ISIS is a term. So now you've been maybe collected because it's about information. So you didn't communicate with ISIS, but because you have communicated about a subject they're searching, you get scooped up. But they have the ability to scoop up everything. So what I've told people, like Flynn's conversation, we record Flynn because we're spying on the Russians. But then we use that conversation to try to see if he contradicts himself in an interview. Think of your own personal lives and think if I'm the government. I come to you and I record 1,000 of your phone calls, private phone calls. Then I bring you in before the FBI and say, what about that phone call you made 2 years ago? And describe, and if you don't describe it consistently, I'm going to put you in jail. That'd be a terrible world to live in. And I think that's, whether Flynn was right or wrong, it's not the details, but we shouldn't do that in America where we record people's phone calls and then ask them about their details of their private
I think a lot of it is because if you have a mastermind with hijackers in America and they're going back and forth with bin Laden's plan to take down planes and kill 3,000 people, they want to be able to go, let's go find all the tentacles and rip these people out like a planter's wart.
And I'm fine with that. But the thing is that when an American gets caught up in it, what I've asked for is that information, one, is supposed to be masked, but it shouldn't be used in domestic crime. Because the problem is let's say you get an international businessman, let's say you get Donald Trump, and you go back 30 years with his conversations and you find out he didn't cross his T's and dot his I's on his taxes properly. That information was gathered on foreigners for terrorism, and there's no constitutional protection for them overseas, which I'm fine with, but Donald Trump should get those protections
but the
for anybody else.
Killer who has had contacts overseas, he becomes a killer in one day. We have him in prison. Do you want to know who he talked to?
Yes, and I have no problem with that. And I have no problem with that. And everything I've ever proposed has an emergency exception in it, that if you think something's ongoing or active, it's the same way with warrants. If I come to your house and the lights are off and it's quiet, I can't come in without a warrant. But if there's screaming going on and someone's saying, I'm going to kill you, I don't have to call the judge, I go in. So there's always exigent circumstances that almost all of us agree to.
But unless you record it all, you're never going to be able to grab it.
Unfortunately, a lot of Americans get swept up in it, and that's just wrong. Senator, thank you very much.
Thanks, Senator.
All right. Coming up, remember when a disgraced teacher said this about the military?
They're not like high-level thinkers. They're not academic people. They're not intellectual people. They're the freaking lowest of our low.
Army General David Perkins has a message for that teacher. You're going to hear it next.
He's in charge of recruiting. All right, it's a story we first brought to you a week ago. You got this California high school teacher now suspended, going on an anti-military rant about the quality of the education of those who serve, and it even enraged White House Chief of Staff General John Kelly yesterday.
To the lowest of the low, they are not talented people. What is your reaction to that, knowing that he's teaching a bunch of 17-year-olds this?
Well, I think the guy ought to go to hell. I just hope he enjoys the liberties in the lifestyle that we have fought for.
Obviously, we talked to him on radio yesterday. We had the Facebook Live up, and he went on to say some expletives we had to dump, but he was really angry. Here to weigh in, a more measured way perhaps, U.S. Army 4-star General David Perkins, commanding general of the U.S. Training and Doctrine, and oversaw transition forces in Iraq. General, we have a message to you, Lieutenant Colonel, and I was lucky enough to be with you before the invasion of Iraq in Kuwait. But you contacted me because you said, listen, I want to address this. This is your gig. You're in charge of telling those 17-year-olds the Army and the military is an option. What's your reaction?
Well, let me just tell you about the soldiers and the recruits that come to the United States Army. The command that I have an honor to be a part of recruits the United States Army. Last year, we recruited about 135,000 total Army soldiers. Across the board, 96% of high school graduates, compared to 82% for our country, 14% higher high school graduates. Of those, about 10,000 are already college graduates. And when they came in the Army, we spent over $160 million in tuition assistance, and another 7,000 got a college education. So they're extremely highly educated. ROTC, which produces the majority of our officer corps, is the largest scholarship granting organization in the United States. Last year, $367 million to 15,000 ROTC cadets, coast to coast, from Harvard to Berkeley, Tufts to Ohio State, have become a part of that organization.
So this ticked you off, even though you have a different personality. You simmer below. You keep your emotions maybe in check, Joe Montana-like, but you still wanted this to go. This really got to you. Let's listen to this teacher go after the quality of the people who serve.
Think about the people who you know are over there. Your freaking stupid Uncle Louie or whatever. They're dumb. They're not like high-level thinkers. They're not academic people. They're not intellectual people. They're the freaking lowest of our low. That's why I came when the president always says we are the best military in the world. Presidents, anybody. I was like, no, we don't. The data is in. We don't have a good military. We haven't been able to beat these guys wearing freaking robes and chanclas for 15 years. We haven't been able to beat anyone since World War II.
The data's in?
Well, that is just not an accurate description of the soldiers in the U.S. military and specifically in the U.S. Army. The U.S. military, for very good reason, is the most highly respected institution in our nation because not only of the education level, but of the character and commitment of those that serve. I have to tell you, and you've been around them, the passion that these people come in the Army with and the skills they bring to the Army. We have doctors, lawyers, combat infantrymen, cyber specialists. 17 presidents are former soldiers, more than any educational, civic, or civilian institution have come out of the Army. 450 Olympic athletes, over 100 gold, silver, bronze medals. In fact, next week we will have 9 soldiers in the Winter Olympic Games. So next week we'll have soldiers in Korea earning bronze medals for athletic excellence and soldiers in Afghanistan earning bronze stars for valor.
General, there's a danger, though, because you have cited all facts and you know the quality of people who serve, but you have a bunch of teachers who feel like that and feel free enough to blast you, the men and women who serve. That goes right against what you're trying to do, and that's recruit the best and the brightest for the best country on the planet.
Well, I'll just echo General Kelly's comment that the reason I and my family serve, both of my children are soldiers, the reason General Kelly's family has served is so that people have the right to express their feelings, and obviously he's taking full advantage of that liberty that we fight hard and afford him. I would offer to him, as somebody who is also involved in training and education, I'm sure he understands the mark of an educated person as an open-minded person who wants to learn as much as he can. So I invite him personally to come to my headquarters. I will introduce him to our Army, his Army. I will let him see his soldiers. I'll take him down to the Army Cyber Center of Excellence. I'll take him to Fort Leonard Wood, where we train engineers. I'll take him to Fort Benning so he can meet combat infantrymen, and he can see the quality of people. And then I'll take him to Walter Reed and talk to wounded warriors, and in their own words, let them describe why they put sacrifice above their own personal safety to serve their nation. And then I'll take them with me the next time I have the honor to represent our leadership at Arlington for a funeral, and let him talk to the family members and let them tell him how proud they are of their sons and daughters that serve our nation.
Wow, extremely well said. You might have to keep him from General Kelly, if you don't mind, on that tour, because I don't think he'll be as diplomatic. But great, very well said. First time we met, it was prior to your Thunder run, the legendary run the 3rd Infantry, 2nd Division took to take Baghdad. And there's the flag that you guys flew. You were just a lieutenant. You were a kid then.
We haven't aged a day, Brian. Look at that.
No, I have aged. You have not.
It's the TV cameras.
Right. You have an excuse. You've been in the desert and you've been fighting for our wars. I have no idea why I've aged so poorly. But it's just been an honor to know you.
Hey, Brian,
and congratulations on your incredible career. And we couldn't have a better person in charge of recruiting.
Well, thanks for your continual personal and professional support for those that wear the uniform of our nation. They appreciate it, and I know you're very sincere about it, and it means a lot to them and our nation.
I feel that way, but so does everyone in this building. Thanks so much.
I appreciate it. Great to be here today.
All right, 30 minutes before the top of the hour. Coming up next, we'll talk to the student who taped that teacher's anti-military rant and his lawyer right here on Fox and Friends. Don't move. Oh, yeah, I got something else to say. I hope you didn't mind that dramatic pause. A deputy hailed a hero after pushing 3 others out of the way of a speeding car. The whole thing is caught on camera. And I won't stop here. I'll just forge ahead. Plus.
We are back with a Fox News alert. We now know the identity of the person that was killed when a garbage truck collided with an Amtrak train that was packed with Republican lawmakers in Virginia.
The NTSB now handling the case, trying to figure out what went wrong.
Meanwhile, Griff Jenkins is live at the scene in Crozet, Virginia, with the breaking details. As the sun comes up, Griff, they're trying to figure out why that truck was on the tracks.
That's right, Steve. Now that the sun's coming up, we're getting a much better look. I want you to see this debris field, just massive, with the back just crushed and mangled. And as you work your way up along that rail, the cab where that one fatality, Christopher Foley, 28 years old, was in with 2 other passengers, one of them critical, the other walking away with minor injuries, and the NTSB working hard. Senator Bill Cassidy, one of the GOP members on that train, on this show in the last hour, had this to say. Take a listen.
Man.
You hear that we hit a truck, and I'm thinking to myself, we have doctors on board, but there's no doctor in that truck. And that truck got slammed harder than we. So I start to work to the back of the train looking for an open door. You go out, you see 2 people on the ground, and you start to work.
The collision happening just a little before noon, and they were able to obviously pull the members out and continue down to the retreat where they are today. House Speaker Paul Ryan talking about the remarkable story of Congress member turned first responders. Here's what he said.
I'm just so thankful for the people who sprung into action today. I'm so thankful for the Capitol Police, the first responders, and to our physician members of Congress who sprang into action. Thank you so much for what you guys did today. It just kind of reminds you sometimes how fragile life can be.
NTSB says they're going to be here for a few days, and it could be months before we get a full report. One of the things they're going to be looking at, the railway cross signs you see up behind me, they were down yesterday. They're looking at whether those were properly working, and other elements like blind spots and the speed of the train. A lot of factors happening here. But again, the good part of the story, these members of Congress treating people right away. One member of Congress, by the way, Congressman Jason Lewis, suffered a concussion, the only member that was hurt, guys.
All right, Griff Jenkins live in Virginia. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Griff.
Meanwhile, let's dial in Dana Loesch. She's a nationally syndicated radio talk show host and author as well. She joins us, I believe, from Dallas. Dana, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone.
So after that train crash, there was a liberal author who tweeted this out, and then he deleted it. But before he deleted it, somebody got a frame grab. He writes, "Wow, between train full of GOPers hitting truck and this, God is working hard today to clean up the stink. Thank her. Hashtag Trey Gowdy. Hashtag GOP train wreck." Perhaps Mr. Tazzini didn't realize somebody died in that accident.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Steve. How horrible is this? And the sad thing is that this individual wasn't the only person who was making remarks like this. I saw certain Hollywood celebrities, Michael Ian Black was one of them, who thought, I guess it's okay to ridicule a fatal train crash because it involved Republicans. Is this really, honestly, the state of political discourse? And aren't these the same people, by the way, who are constantly complaining about the state of political discourse? And then they have the audacity, probably before this poor individual's family was even notified of this fatality, to ridicule and mock this because it involved Republicans. How about saying some kind words for those who were involved in this crash, or maybe, heaven forbid, saying a prayer for the individuals who were involved in this and for the family of the individual who was killed? This is awful.
Well, at least they did delete it.
Yeah, Dana, let's talk about State of the Union address, because the president, he mentioned in his speech, he talked to about these families that lost their girls, the 16-year-old girls that were killed by MS-13, the gang members. He said that's basically why we need the wall. That's why immigration is so important. But you have Democrats that are saying he's racist because they're saying that he was talking about DACA. Here is Representative or Congresswoman Maxine Waters. Listen to what she said.
Speech cannot and does not make Donald Trump presidential. He's not presidential, and he never will be presidential. He claims that he's bringing people together, but make no mistake, he is a dangerous, unprincipled, divisive, and shameful racist. Trump often works to convince dissatisfied elements in our society that all of their problems are caused by people of color.
Dana, when some Democrats say the bonuses are crumbs, that doesn't resonate well for that party. But does this resonate? Is this a talking point for the Democrats that will help them in November?
No, absolutely not, Ainsley. And I think it's shameful that these identity politics and the race card, using this argument, this is the last refuge for individuals who have no other argument. They're terrified because the economy is doing well, and the president hit hard on that in his State of the Union address. I thought it was a great address. I thought it started off strong. I spoke with listeners all across the country yesterday. I took calls all for 3 hours yesterday on my radio program, and every single person, even people who have been really critical of the president during his first year in office, really liked this address, and we saw that reflected in the polls. I mean, you had one poll that came out from CBS that showed 72% of independents actually approved of this address, and that's the demo that put him over the top in November 2016. That's the demo that Democrats need to continue to be relevant, and so they don't have the product. They don't even have the messaging anymore, so they have to fall back on the race card. And as far as them talking about MS-13, and I know a lot of progressive pundits have been trying to downplay MS-13, and it's shameful the ignorance that they have on display. They do not know that the Massachusetts U.S. Attorney's Office considers this one of the largest criminal organizations in the United States, with over 6,000 members in over 46 states, responsible for many, many deaths, that they would downplay this and that they would try to downplay how illegal entry plays into MS-13 and how it's important to secure our borders. That's shameful, and it displays an ignorance that I can't believe that they feel proud to parade on television with. And so the president was spot on about this. And these families, how can anyone sit here and say and talk about how entering the country illegally is somehow racist, particularly when you have minority communities that are disproportionately negatively impacted by illegal entry? I don't know how anyone could look at the grieving parents of those women, Nissa Mickens, the two girls who were murdered by MS-13, sitting there in the box with the First Lady, and they are grieving silently. This is affecting middle-class Americans. It's affecting all Americans. It's affecting our families. Something needs to be done about it.
Brentwood is mostly Hispanic, black and Hispanic, and they've been the victims of MS-13, and that's where both those families are from. One of those girls was probably looking at a basketball scholarship had she not just been walking home from school. Meanwhile, what were a lot of the Democratic lawmakers doing? Well, looking glum in many respects, and maybe doing something else on their phones. Look at this. One of these enterprising reporters in the gallery was able to shoot over the shoulders of some of the lawmakers, and they're checking their email and maybe even playing Candy Crush.
Yeah, I'm surprised they have anything to criticize, Brian, about the president's State of the Union address, seeing as half of them weren't paying attention or they were sitting on their hands, which floored me. I mean, when the president's talking about unity and he's talking about record low unemployment across every demographic, how are you not applauding that? I mean, is that so bad? Jobs are bad, unity's bad, you can't applaud for those things? I don't understand this defeatist attitude that Democrats have. Either they want to go forward and they want prosperity, or they don't.
Well, maybe the reason they didn't stand up and clap is because they were on level 9 of Candy Crush. Right. Dana Lash, thank you very much. I can't stand up. I'm on level 9. All right.
You seem to know a lot about it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dana.
All right. 18 minutes before the top of the hour. News time.
I'm proud to say I've never played Candy Crush. Thank goodness.
I haven't either. I'm just guessing there's a level 9.
I'm capable of standing. Good morning to you guys. Let's get you caught up on some of your headlines, starting with this. It's not just the flu virus. Now medication is being blamed for at least one death. An Indiana family says Tamiflu caused a 16-year-old to take his own life. Charlie Harp killing himself less than 24 hours after taking Tamiflu. His aunt blaming the medication's severe side effects, which warns of abnormal behavior in young patients. And we're now learning a 15-year-old girl, Kira Molina, has died from the flu 5 days after being diagnosed. Forced to apply for college, even if they have no intention of going. State lawmakers in New Mexico considering a proposal that would make those applications a requirement for graduation. Students enlisting in the military, vocational school, or doing internships would be excused. The bill is designed to help declining college enrollment in the state. That's a look at your headlines. Send it back to you guys.
All right, thank you.
Worcester College. All right, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, still ahead on our show. Man's best friend really bringing home the bacon. How did this dog just get approved for unemployment benefits? Congratulations.
President Trump vowing to help end the opioid crisis gripping our nation during his State of the Union speech. Watch this.
Prevail.
But a new congressional report suggests Medicaid fraud might actually be driving the opioid crisis by making it easier for the enrollees to abuse and then resell the highly addictive painkillers. Here to weigh in on this is Dr. Kevin Sabet. He is a former White House drug policy advisor and an affiliated fellow at Yale University and went to Oxford. Very informed, worked for 3 administrations. Thank you so much, Doctor, for being with us.
Thanks for having me, Ainsley.
So what's the real problem here?
Well, there's multiple things going into the opioid epidemic, and there's plenty of blame to show. There are seemingly, with Medicaid expansion, there have been some issues with fraud, but that's also been a way for people to get treatment too. So I wouldn't throw the baby out with the bathwater. There's plenty of blame on all sides on this. Even private insurers are to blame. Many of them won't cover quality addiction treatment. We need quality addiction treatment in this country. We need funding for it, for the President's Opioid Commission, which was a bipartisan commission, put out a very good report. Now we need to see Congress and the administration fund those recommendations. That's how we're going to get out of this crisis.
I mean, so many people need painkillers for whatever they're going through, and they're not abusing it, but there are so many that are, and unfortunately, something has to be done. And those folks who really need the medication, we don't want them to, them to have to experience
It's a balance,
pain.
Absolutely. You know, the vast majority of people who have prescribed painkillers actually don't have a problem with them. It's a small minority, but that small minority consumes over 90% of the pills. So there have been a lot of opioid manufacturers who have been encouraging overprescribing. In fact, many attorneys general, from Mike DeWine in Ohio to Mr. Schneiderman here in New York, they have actually taken suits against the opioid manufacturers because of their false claims. So there's a lot of blame here. I wouldn't put all the blame on Medicaid. We don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. That can be a way to get people to treatment, but the issue is we need high quality treatment in this country, and we don't have it.
Okay, the numbers are just staggering. 170,000 recipients of Medicaid are doctor shopping. They're going to 5 or more doctors. I mean, that's insane. How do you prevent that?
Doctor shopping is a huge issue. Well, we need states to get on board with prescription monitoring programs. And again, it's not just Medicaid
like a
recipients.
Database,
a database, which we've begun, but we need to actually have some teeth behind that database. We need to do much better doctor prescribing. We need to, in some states, we need to limit prescribing for those who have a history of addiction. Doctors should be asking, when you go to the doctor, they should be looking at your history. And that's how we see addiction as a health issue. We need to mainstream it into regular health care so that it's not just in the church basements only. Because if we continue to do that, and we continue to do things like legalize marijuana and these other very harmful policies, we're going to make the opioid crisis much worse. This is an addiction crisis.
You hear that, California?
And many other states. This is an addiction crisis, not just an opioid crisis. These are people who are using opioids, mixing them with alcohol, benzodiazepines, multiple things going on. We need